To the world over, Superman was the first superhero. He made comics what it is today. Without him, there would be no other comic book hero. No Avengers, no Justice League, no Fantastic Four. But what if I told you he wasn't even DC Comics' first superhero? And what's more, he wasn't even America's first superhero. In fact, Superman wasn't even the first Superman. If you ask anyone around the world who the first superhero was, the majority of the people will tell you it was Superman. However, there were actually a number of superheroes who debuted long before the Man of Steel. Spring-Heeled Jack would actually be the first, although he wasn't a superhero in his debut, in the 1878 Penny Dreadful. In fact, he was a supervillain who was eventually made into a superhero in the late 1970s, but generally, most historians consider Jack the first superhero. There was, however, another actual superhero who actually introduced the world to the superhero fiction comic, and that was Hugo Hercules in 1902. Hugo Hercules was a good-natured man endowed with superhuman strength and wanders about town helping people with their problems. This comic strip wasn't very popular though, and ended just 5 months after its debut in January of 1903. 1903 also saw the introduction of a character often cited as the earliest American superhero in The Scarlet Pimpernel, as a stage play and then made it into a novel in 1905. The Scarlet Pimpernel was the first to disguise himself as a meek and ineffectual ordinary person, the first superhero with a secret identity. 1911 introduced John Carter of Mars, which would be the leading inspiration for Superman. 1912 introduced Tarzan the Ape Man to the public. In 1919, The Curse of Capistrano introduced Zorro for the very first time. Buck Rogers took to the sky in August 1928 in the Amazing Stories pulp magazine in a story entitled Armageddon 2419 AD. In 1930, The Shadow debuted as a voice announcer in the radio show Detective Stories. He then debuted in pulp fiction in 1931 in the story The Living Shadow from The Shadow magazine #1. January 1930 also saw the introduction of the Lone Ranger, with his faithful companion Tonto being introduced a month later. Conan the Barbarian hit pulp fiction magazines in December 1932, while Doc Savage was introduced in The Man of Bronze in March 1933, and would actually hold the title of the Superman or the Man of Steel long before Superman himself. The first incarnation of Superman appeared in the short story pulp The Reign of the Superman in January of 1933 as a bald telepathic supervillain. Other superheroes were also introduced in one medium or another during the 1930s as well. These include Mandrake the Magician on June 11, 1934, created by Lee Falk, The Phantom Magician on April 15, 1935 by Mel Graff, The Phantom on February 17, 1936 by Lee Falk, all three of which were newspaper comic strip heroes. In comic book form, the superhero as we know them today was introduced in October of 1935 in New Fun Comics #6 under the name Dr. Occult, the Ghost Detective. Dr. Occult is a member of the JSA even to this day. Sheena the Jungle Queen, who most historians agree to be the first female comic book superhero, made her debut in the comic book Wags #1 in 1937. Both Superman and Zatara made their first appearances in Action Comics #1 in June 1938. Zatara's story in this issue was entitled Zatara, Master Magician, and it took up pages 20 through 31 by Fred Gardner, with Superman's story being on pages 1 through 13 by Siegel and Schuster. So, for those keeping track, Superman was not the world's first superhero. In fact, there were many superheroes before Superman. And yes, I know before you make the argument that most of them were comic strip, pulp magazine, or novel superheroes, I'll be going into the difference between the many different styles of superheroes in a different video. However, that does not change the fact that Superman was by far not the world's first superhero. I'm Shannon for Comicgeddon TV. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos. Go ahead and leave us a like, comment down below, and share with your family and friends. Take care.